travel and tourism industry in the US generated nearly $1.6 trillion in economic output during 2015. And this activity supported 7.6 million jobs, which means that 1 every 18 Americans is employed by the tourism industry. Online reputation management is booming as customers now flock to the web to make their hotel and travel reservations. Loews Hotels is a luxury hospitality company that owns over 25 hotels in the US and Canada and provide an upscale and unique travel experience.
The Loews Regency has been an icon on Park Avenue for 50 years. It's been home to many of our repeat guests for generations, literally. The Regency has always been a Park Avenue icon.
Loews is currently the top boutique hotel chain in North America, with 23 locations across the United States and Canada, over 10,500 rooms, and a revenue close to $820 million per year. When comparing with the industry's main indicators during 2016, Loews nearly tripled the revenue per available room with $230, compared with the industry's $80 per room. Occupancy rate at 83% average, it's almost 18 points higher than the industry's 65.5%.
The response of our travelers who say this is a very unique and special brand. Great location, great rooms, the views are phenomenal.
All this success, however, brings a challenge, which is how to create and maintain smart and sustainable growth in the organization. It is extremely important for the retailers to adopt methodologies that allow them to identify high-value customers.
One of the most important pieces of this puzzle is how to increase revenue in services. Services like restaurants, like bars, like a spa, like the stores in the different locations. And I think that that's one of the key challenges that Loews has to keep that sustainable growth.
And when we added all of these pieces together is when we came to our business objectives, which basically there are two, so we can say that you got two for the price of one. One of those business challenges is to identify those factors that help to predict these high-value customers.
Our business objective is to identify characteristics consumers most closely associate with different properties, the sentiment associated with these characteristics, and finally, which characteristics predict future property level revenue.
We got three sources of data.
The first one is the transactional data that we received from Loews Corporation after we signed the non-disclosure agreement,
which includes every transaction at each property for the last 18 months, totaling about 28 million transactions.
In order to identify the characteristics consumers associate with their stay at Loews, we turn to TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor is an online site that allows consumers to review their experiences at places like hotels.
And finally, the third source is we mapped based on the customer's billing zip code, which was provided as part of the data. We were able to add customer demographics data. And this was very important because it allowed us to discover basic demographic stuff like what is the median income from each of the locations the customer comes from and so on.
Based on all this information, we were able to look into 4 different dimensions. One at the customer level, which is identified by membership types and zip codes. 2, sales channels, which are identified by the different travel agents that made each reservation. The time, of course, which accounted for different seasonality. And finally, at the product level, where we can look at individual room types. When we look into membership types, we wanted to know if there is a difference among these levels. When considering length of stay, we see a median of 2 nights per stay on the lower tier of membership level. The upper tier of this level is virtually identical in terms of length of stay, with a median of 3 nights per stay. We start to see a difference by membership level when we look at the services charges per stay. And we see a similar trend when exploring room charges. Average spending goes up until gold level and then smoothly drops at platinum level.
Our next challenge related to analyzing what happened when we looked into different sales channels. We found something very interesting when we explored the travel agents, because we realized that even though the travel agents on average did not provide more revenue per folio or per customer, they do tend to have less variance than reservations made directly through non-travel agents, which actually makes sense, right? Because normally travel agents work on a pre-packaged vacation, whereas someone who just go by themselves without any travel vacations, actually it is expected that they will vary more into their expenses.
Over the last 14 years, there is a general consensus that Loews delivers an enjoyable experience. By looking at each property, we found that each property consistently delivers a positive experience. However, there are some hotels that have a wide extreme of sentiment. Take, for example, Atlanta. The reviews for the last 14 years are more compressed around positive sentiment, whereas at the Beach House Suite, this property has a sentiment that has a wider variance between negative and positive reviews.
Knowing that the overall experience at a Loews hotel has been positive, what exact characteristics or features do consumers talk about when writing the review? Those characteristics most talked about are room, staff, pool, and the restaurant. The next step is to understand how these features change by property, identify the sentiment score associated with reviews that discuss these exact features, and finally to predict how the sentiment score for these features impact revenue.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Tisch, Chairman of Loews Hotels, and we are excited to tell you a little bit about the new project.
One of the biggest challenges in building our algorithms was our feature engineering based on potential predictors. And that challenge was enhanced by the fact that there was no linear relationship between demographics and customer expenses. For example, this chart shows that a plotting of customer income as a function of average room expenses, and as can be seen, there is no linearity at all. Because of this, we explored more complex models based on logistic regression, random forest, and support vector classification. This other chart is very interesting, as it shows customers with higher or lower value than a threshold and their respective median income and median rent. Those customers with higher value are depicted in orange, whereas those with lower value are depicted in blue. As shown, there is no linear frontier among them, which makes us believe that the predictive task is a good candidate for SVM classification. During our modeling, we also played around with several classification thresholds as it affects total accuracy. This chart shows all the points in our data set divided by true or false, positive or negative for a given threshold. And different thresholds allowed us to visualize different precision and recall measurements. And finally, this ROC curve shows that the prototype algorithms have a better performance in terms of area under the curve than random predictors. However, we are becoming more strict in terms of feature engineering, so please stay tuned for more.
The whole team is very excited to meet you all in May.
Yes, definitely. Elisa, Janelle, Vasil, Patricio, and myself, we are very excited to share our findings with you all in May.
See you then.